We have endured the most brutal period of times in human history. The importance of history is something that can never be overstated. Without it, it creates a void within us and generates an inferiority complex, where we feel insignificant in the world scale. Understand that 90% of our history is not in history books and have been fashioned in a manner to be invisible to us. Steadily but surely, we are uncovering the truth and shining a ray of light towards our fallen heroes in a manner that reintroduces flesh to dried bones, to bring them back to life that they may never be forgotten. History should be forgiven and the heroes of our past never forgotten. Here are 3 African heroes that we should never forget. Patrice Lumamba, the first Prime Minister of the Democratic Republic of Congo, nicknamed by Malcolm X the greatest black man to walk the continent of Africa, and I call him the template of African unity. Born in 1925 on Ulua, Belgium, Congo, Patrice Lumamba played a pivotal role in liberating Congo from the strongholds of Belgium. He was consequential in establishing an independent republic, and for this he paid the ultimate price: his life. Shortly after independence, insurrection broke out in Congo, leading to mutiny within the army. In 1956, Patrice Lumumba was invited to Belgium for a study tour. He was arrested upon his arrival back to Congo. After serving his sentence, he pioneered the Congo National Movement, also known as MNC, which was the first party of Congo. This led to Belgium declaring elections in Congo, which was met by an uprising. Out of fear of Belgium's intentions of inaugurating a puppet government, the people revolted. Belgium retaliated, leading to the arrest of Patrice Lumumba and the death of 30 Congolese citizens. The MNC subsequently won the election and demanded the release of Patrice Lumumba. Discussions and arrangements pursued to negotiate the formation of the new country of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Patrice Lumumba was inaugurated as the first Prime Minister of the new democratic country. Independence Day 1960. All hell broke loose. The King of Belgium was in attendance and gave a speech. In his speech, he called the former king of Belgium, Leopold, a genius, a man who presided over the most diabolical and brutal regime in human history. I stand by this statement strongly. No group of people have been through an inch of what Congo went through under the regime of Leopold. To make matters worse, the king went further in his praise of Leopold, saying that he was the precursor to Congo's civilization. Basically, he spoke in a condescending manner as though Leopold was responsible for everything good to ever come out of Congo. My man Patrice Lumumba then got on stage and said, "Yo, miss me with that bullshit." Okay, he didn't say that. Patrice Lumumba exclaimed of how land was taken away from the people. He mentions of the cruel injustice that Congo faced because its citizens were melanated. He mentions of how their fate at the time was worse than death itself. And I quote, "Who will forget the massacres where so many of our brothers perished? The cells into which those who refused to submit to a regime of oppression and exploitation were thrown. We were subject to exhausting work, exacted in exchange for salaries, which did not permit us to eat enough to drive away hunger, or to clothe ourselves, nor house ourselves decently, or to raise our children as creatures dear to us." He spoke about the injustice of how in their country they weren't permitted to live in certain areas or enter certain buildings and restaurants and so on. This was a slap to the face of Belgium, and the whole world was there to witness it. Immediately after Congo's independence, Belgium sent 6,000 troops to Congo in support of rebellion against the newly declared sovereign country. January 17, 1961. A few months after Congo's independence, accompanied by Belgium, Mobutu Sese Seko ordered the execution of Patrice Lumumba alongside 2 of his colleagues. Their bodies were later dug up, cut into pieces, and dissolved in acid. In 2002, Belgium released an apology for their participation in the assassination of Patrice Lumamba, Congo's first prime minister. Other Western governments have also admitted their involvement in his death. History should be forgiven, but the heroes of our past never forgotten. This reflects a very similar saga in a lot of African countries, where after independence, an elite group of African leaders rose up to the task of taking Africa to new heights. Through a cascade of coups and changes in government, this led to a new generation of predatory dictatorships who benefited from the initial foundations of colonization, foundations set in place to ensure the exploitation of the mass and at the same time ensuring stability by making sure the people don't revolt to prevent an insurrection. History should be forgiven, and the heroes of our past never forgotten. Thomas Sankara, Africa's Che Guevara. I refer to him as a prophet. I also call him the leader of the land of upright men, a man who challenged the authorities of former colonial powers. Thomas Sankara's vision for Africa was far above its time. In a prophetic manner, as though he knew the plans of Africa's neo-imperialism, he was a strong advocate for economic freedom. He came about this by appointing women to high governmental positions, reducing the salaries of public officials, banning government officials from the use of luxury items such as Mercedes first-class plane tickets. He also established a mandatory dress code of locally made clothes. Most importantly, he made Burkina Faso economically independent. He accomplished this by opposing foreign aid. He also encouraged the production of locally grown food. Thomas Sankara once said, and I quote, "Some people ask me, where's imperialism? Just look at your plate. When you eat, you see imported rice, corn, millet. This is imperialism. No need to look further. The person who feeds you imposes his will on you." No wonder he was a strong advocate against foreign aid. Thinking about it, is this not what neocolonialization is? Is this not the biggest issue facing Africa today? Those are the words of someone future-oriented, a prophet. Only the Northern Star can guide a visionary like Thomas Sankara. He said, "I, alongside my delegation, are dressed by our tailors, fed by our farmers. Not a single thread came from Europe or America." On his way to a cabinet meeting, the setting of his assassination took place. During its course, in the midst of a crossfire, to prevent unnecessary death, he came out with hands stretched as far as to the corners of the globe. He was brutally gunned down. Earlier in this video, I mentioned that 90% of our history is fashioned in a manner to be made invisible to us. In 2017, President Emmanuel Macro of France, upon his visit to Burkina Faso, promised that France will declassify French files of their participation in the country's assassination of Thomas Sankara. We are yet to see those files. History should be forgiven, but the heroes of our past never forgotten. I know that in this video I promised that we'll be going into detail about 3 African leaders that we should never forget. I lied. Sort of. The 3rd leader on my list is you. Thomas Sankara once said, "There are 7 million Thomas Sankaras." And personally, I believe one of them is you. Africa is calling on a visionary like you, someone who will obey her call, someone who will not take advantage of her, someone who is upright and more than willing to put Africa first.